You are tuning in to the Atlanta Realtors Rundown, the official podcast for the Atlanta Realtors. We're here to keep you updated with the latest trends, topics, and keep you in the know of our ever-changing Atlanta market. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Atlanta Realtors Rundown, your premier podcast on all things real estate. I'm your host, Neil Midder, here to bring you the latest insights, trends, and success stories in all things real estate. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please make sure you do that. Hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. We're also very keen to hear any comments you've got, so please leave it at the end of today's episode and let us know if there's any topics you'd like us to talk about. Talking about success stories, I'm very excited to be here with Justin Landis today. Justin, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I always start off with some of the really tough questions first, just to kind of ease your way into it. So what's your favorite place in Atlanta?
My favorite place in Atlanta. I think my favorite place in Atlanta is Grant Park, which is, we've lived in that neighborhood for over 20 years. And I mean, the amount of time spent there, playground with the kids, running with the dog, out for a walk, it is just like a treasure right in the heart of the city.
And have you seen, what kind of changes have you seen in Grant Park over that period of time?
There have been a lot of changes in Grant Park. I mean, there wasn't a grocery store anywhere nearby. There were only a couple restaurants when we moved there. And now, I mean, there's grocery store in every corner, and there's 20, 30 restaurants. And I feel like we've kind of grown up with the neighborhood because my wife and I, we moved there right when we were first married, and no kids. Now I have 3 daughters. And so I feel like we've kind of grown up with the neighborhood a little bit. That's
awesome. So favorite restaurant, all type of food?
Man, favorite restaurant. I think my favorite restaurant, pizza is my favorite food. So I think Nina and Raffi in Inman Park, Old Fourth Ward area, right on the Beltline. The Detroit-style pizza, it's the best of both worlds. I mean, it's not as thick as the Chicago, not as thin as New York, right in the middle. Absolute favorite.
I was going to, clearly, you can tell from my accent, I'm not from the US. I was going to say Detroit. I've heard of Chicago. I've heard New York pizza, but
you got to try it. You got to try it. It's so good.
Definitely do that. So do you have like a mantra or a phrase that you like to live your life by?
Man, I don't think that I have one mantra, but I mean, my life is guided by, I have a strong faith. And I mean, that's definitely my beacon and the light that guides me on what I do is to, glorify God and love other people.
Great. So for people that don't know much about you, I know that you went to Georgia Tech, you did chemical engineering, started in real estate, I think it was 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Top producer in your first year. Is that right? Within your business?
Yes. Well, yeah, I don't think that's a normal path to go Georgia Tech chemical engineer to
I wanted to find
real
out a
estate.
bit more about that too.
But after having a couple of internships at Georgia Tech, I realized I should not be an engineer. As a matter of fact, my advisor, when I told him I wasn't going to be an engineer, and I don't know if this was a positive or a negative comment, I was like, I'm not going to do engineering. He's like, I think that's a good choice for you. Now, is that a good choice because I'm going to be so awesome at what else I'm doing? Or is that because I'm not a good engineer? I didn't ask the follow-up question, but I'm the type of person, I like to do my own thing. I like to try stuff. I have a pretty high risk tolerance. So I originally got into real estate flipping houses. And so I had one job out of college, flipped a couple houses on the side, and I made a little bit of money on those houses, mainly because the market was good. I mean, this is early 2000s, 2003, like you said. And so even though we didn't know what we were doing, basically the market rose and that saved us into making a little bit of money. And I did this with a couple friends. And my wife had a corporate job at the time, and she's always been super supportive, my entrepreneurial spirit. And I was like, I think I could make a living flipping houses. So I quit my job and started flipping houses full time. We bought a We Buy Ugly Houses franchise. You ever seen the We Buy Ugly Houses billboards? Mm-hmm. And when I say bought, we borrowed money they should have never loaned to people in the early 20s. But hey, back then you sign a bunch of sheets of paper and you can buy as many houses as you want. And we did, from 2003 up to 2008, I think we flipped about 150 houses. And so actually did get good at it, but did not see the market turning. Did not see that the market was going to turn. Those were super leveraged. And so all of a sudden, market turns, we're in a terrible, terrible spot. I mean, I think we had 12 houses for sale, none under contract, and upside down on every one.
Wow.
That is not a good position to be in. And at that point, that's when I really became a full-time real estate agent, mainly out of necessity. I'd had my license all that time flipping those houses, but I wasn't serving anybody else. Wasn't helping any friends or other clients, just our own houses. And so basically, it was 2008. Job market's bad, economy's bad, haven't had a job in a long time. I'm in an amount of debt I wouldn't have even thought was possible. And I was like, I need to make money. What do I know how to do?
Back to chemical engineering? No?
Man, I mean, maybe who knows? In hindsight, maybe I should have. Now that I tell this story, I'm like, the odds I was going to succeed didn't seem that great, just based on the time of the market and everything. But yeah, so in 2008, I was like, I think maybe somebody else will let me help them buy or sell a house. And that's when I made the move to be a full-time real estate agent, was 2008.
So even, you said you did so many flips in a short period of time. Were other people coming to you for advice on what to do and how to do the flips?
So people knew that I was in real estate.
Right.
And people would ask me questions about investing, but people didn't think if they were going to buy it, like my friends and, network, they didn't think I need to go to Justin to help me buy or sell a house. They knew Justin was real estate, but that was a big part of when I first started was, flipping over in people's mind that when they think of Justin, they think, oh, he can help me buy or sell a house. But two things that were actually really helpful when I started to do that was because I did have that experience with investing. I understood that. And also because I had the experience being underwater and upside down on houses. A lot of other people were in that same situation.
Right.
And so I understood it. I knew how to work with the banks and had a lot of experience in that. And so those two things were actually really helpful during those down years, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, because a lot of the market was investors and foreclosures and short sales, and then first-time home buyers, which I was in that age group to be able to do that. So I was really fortunate that I was able to operate in the market of the moment because a lot of the market was not good during those years.
Right. So you had those 10 homes or 12 homes that you said. How long did it take you to be able to sell those?
Man, it took, I think in 2012, so 2012 was when the market turned back up. I'd had good years prior to that, but a really great year that year. And I think that's when I got all of that debt paid off. I mean, some of those we short sold, some we worked out payment plans, some we held until we could sell them. I had a couple business partners in that business, but it took us, years to work out all of that, get all that stuff paid off and canceled and everything.
So really did have to wait for the market to turn around in order for
and also wait for the market to turn around for me to make enough money to,
right.
finish paying them off, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So the transition from a flipper to full-time real estate, how was that for you? How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, I was super fortunate. I got connected to a guy who was already established, Rich Richardson, who's become a good friend of mine and a mentor. And so I went to work with him. And when I went to, got to the brokerage, it was the first time I was at a bigger brokerage that offered, more training and that sort of stuff. And I remember I went in and met with somebody on staff at the beginning and they're like, all right, how are you going to generate business? And I was like, I don't know. You tell me, how am I going to generate business? And they're like, well, there are three primary ways people are doing it. And the three ways that she laid out, she was like, you can cold call. And I was like, oh, that doesn't seem up my alley. 2 or 3. What do we got?
Right.
Next one, you can door knock. I was like, slightly better. Hoping number 3 is something better than this, though. Number 3, you can talk to people you know. And I was like, oh, that's me. I'm a big extrovert. My wife is too. We have 3 kids now, and even up until our second, aggressive social calendar. And so I knew a ton of people. And I was like, all right, I can do that. And so I set out. And for anyone listening, if you're newer, I still think this works. What I did that first year, and I don't know why, there were computers, but I printed this out on paper. I had a printed list of everybody, and I was going to make a certain number of calls per day and go on 1 face-to-face appointment per day. Now, this is not a listing appointment or a buyer consult by any stretch.
Right.
This is meet me for coffee, work out together, get a drink, whatever. But I was like, if I meet one person every business day this year, different person, 250 people, surely some of those people will give me the opportunity to help them. And so I did, and I have good scripts for this kind of stuff now, but at the time, no scripts. My basic plan was make sure real estate comes up in the conversation and then follow up afterwards and be helpful with something that they talked about. And I tell you what, I didn't sell that many houses that year in 2008, which is the year that I did that. But in 2009, I sold 30 houses, which was like a shockingly good year. And it was all, there was no marketing dollars, no marketing or anything other than just me meeting all of these people, following up and being helpful. And I still think that will work. Neil, you can't tell me if you met 250 different people, talked about real estate, were nice and followed up. Some of them are not going to want your help to buy or sell a house. They are.
I don't know 250 people, Justin.
Well,
so,
so-
I mean, maybe I need to borrow some of the people. From
Well,
you.
maybe you do, but also, but the big thing, so one of the things about calling, and I was fortunate, so I will say that. I mean, I did have I knew a lot of people, but one of the big things in the calling was to get connections to other people so I could meet someone, you
Right.
know? And so if you think about that, you're like, hey, I need to set, because it's much easier to set a coffee appointment per day than it is to set a listing appointment. Now, it'd be awesome if we could all set a listing appointment every day, but practically speaking,
take it.
how many people are doing 250 listing appointments a year, right? I mean,
Right.
like, that is really hard to do. But if you're like, hey, my focus of today is I'm going to get a coffee or lunch or drink with someone scheduled, I think most of us could accomplish that if we set out to do that each day. And that will work. I'm confident that will work.
And as you said, you're an outgoing person anyway, so you probably really enjoyed that anyway. So it's
Well,
not,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
not like work
yes,
either,
I mean,
right?
that strategy obviously aligns with who I am. And I do think that's big in whatever your lead gen strategy is. You've got to do something that lines up with your values, with who you are, with who you're for, like, you know, who's your business for. Because, you know, back to door knocking, and so I mentioned Grant Park. So Grant Park's a neighborhood where the houses are close together. I'm in good shape. I can walk around. I'm good at memorizing scripts. I've got support where I could take names and follow up with marketing. So like I have all the tools to be good at door knocking, but I have a belief that it is intrusive to knock on someone's door and bother them at home. That is going to make it really hard for me to be effective at door knocking, especially over the long haul. I might tough it out for a little while, but that's probably not a multi-year strategy of going something against I believe in
Right.
every day. And I think that's important for us as we think about what's our strategy for generating business. It's going to be best if you can line it up with who you are and what you believe in.
Completely agree. I didn't do door knocking, but I was helping my community association. We were doing like a garage sale. So I went to knock on some people's doors. People would just march me off their property when I'm trying to help them do that. So I'm thinking, yeah, that's not really the way that I want to.
But some people have been super successful with it and
loads of
done
people.
awesome. Yeah. And so that's great because, I mean, they come in with a belief of, hey, you know, my job is to educate this neighborhood. I'm educating this neighborhood. I'm doing a service. And that's awesome. And they are. But it lines up with what they, you know, what they believe and what they want to do.
Yeah, and as you said, it really does depend on which way you want to go because people are good at different things.
For sure.
Some people are very successful at doing open houses too.
For sure.
So, I mean, you just find your niche and kind of work it.
Definitely. Definitely.
So you started, you know, when you're meeting with these people, obviously your focus is talking about real estate, but that's not the primary focus of the conversation, I take it, right?
No, I mean, the primary conversation was to build a relationship. I mean, I have a belief that, and I mean, this has been backed up by studies, is one of the things that buyers and sellers want most in their real estate agent is trust. They want to trust the person. And I believe that trust comes from relationships. And this is great news for any new agents because if what they wanted most was experience, the new agents would have very little chance to ever get any business. But you see people come in this industry all the time and they're really successful. And that's because people trust them more than they trust an experienced person they don't know. And so I think conversations lead to relationships. Relationships lead to trust, and trust is what leads to business. So my number one goal, build relationships with people. And so that's having conversations. And then if you just follow up and are helpful, whether it's obviously we'd love to help them buy I'd love to help them buy a house or look at a house. But if it's like, hey, we're thinking about painting our house, I'll follow up with a painter. They're thinking they're doing some sort of have a challenge in life. I'll follow up by sending them a book about that topic. And so just try to be helpful and stay in touch, build that relationship. And obviously, you know, if there's real estate opportunities, take them. Yeah.
But I think that's, you know, that works for, you know, anyone new in real estate, but I think also experienced people too. I know a lot of experienced people that, you know, when the business goes quiet, you know, they could be reaching out to their network too. And I think sometimes they think it's difficult to reach out to people if they haven't talked to them for a while. So do you have any advice for you know, if you haven't spoken to somebody for a long time, what do you do when you?
I mean, well, first of all, they're not. People know you're calling now. It's not like they're gonna, you know, you're tricking someone into talking to you. If they pick up the phone and answer, they want to talk to you. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Is just from a belief standpoint. Is hey, people are happy to hear from you. We help agents, you know, connect with their database, connect with people they haven't talked to in a long time. And I would say the number one takeaway that people have after doing it, after making a lot of connections, they're like, those conversations were great. People were really happy to hear from me. Yeah, people like you. You're a good person. They wouldn't answer the phone if they didn't want to talk to you. And so they are happy to hear from you. So I think that is really important. More important than the script is your just belief that, hey, people want to talk to me and this is going to be a good conversation. I mean, I think that is most important.
But you also said that you did that for a 9-month period before you got, you know, you didn't get anything out of it that year, but the next year generated it. So why did you continue to do it if you're doing it for such a long period of time and you didn't get anything immediately?
Yeah, so I mean that year, so 2008 is the year I set out to do that, and I think maybe I sold 6 or 7 houses that year, so it wasn't zero.
Okay.
But also houses were a lot less expensive. So it's not like selling 6 or 7 houses now. So I did sell a few houses, but I could see that it was working from the standpoint of I was in conversation, I had people in my pipeline, and like I said earlier about my wife having it, she had a corporate job, and so I was just really fortunate that I could tough it out and make it to the next year and do it. And so that year was great. And then the down years in the market, 2010, 11, and 12, I had really good years, all of those years, and I would do anything. I mean, sold an auto garage in East Atlanta, new construction incoming, investment property in Forest Park, mountain cabin in Dahlonega. I mean, anybody who is like, hey, could you help me with this?
Right.
Oh yeah, I can help you. Even if I had to figure out what to do. And so just felt like really scrapped those years, but had good years, was helping people, was doing pretty well. Like I said, I was in the market of first-time home buyers and investors, which was great. And then the market turned up in 2012 and business exploded. And anybody who had made it through, business exploded because we made it. We were still in the industry, still doing it. And then the market was better. And so that year I had a really great year, sold a ton of houses, but worked all the time. Not exaggerating, a 365-day year, every evening, every weekend. I had a part-time assistant. She was really great, but didn't have any showing help. I think had 40-some buyers and another 15 listings or something, and I'm doing all those showings myself, working all the time. And this came into a big point in my career because my wife got pregnant that year with our first, and I could see my pipeline was even better next year.
Right.
And I was like, there is not enough time in the day for me to serve the clients that I have, and I'm never going to see my daughter awake. I'm never going to be home. I need to do something different. And so that was a real crossroads for me to try to figure out what to do differently at that point.
So what did you do? What did you do differently?
Yeah, so I was talking with my broker at the time about it, and I had 2 ideas. And some of y'all listeners can relate to this. I had an idea I was going to either, one, make my business more boutique, and I had identified my 50 best clients and referral sources. And I was like, I'll work with them and their direct referrals, so don't break any referral chains. And then I'll work business in Grant Park, where I had a good business going already, a good amount of listings. It's my home neighborhood. Or I need to bring someone on to help. Mm-hmm. And my broker, she asked me, she was like, well, Justin, how would a buyer's agent do if you brought them on? I was like, well, they do great. They make 6 figures. The clients are all my referrals and friends. We weren't doing any, marketing or advertising outside my database at this point. And I was like, I don't know if I'm a good boss, but I'm a nice person. It's not a toxic environment, to be around me.
Right.
And she asked me, she's like, well, Justin, if you could provide that opportunity for someone and you don't, are you doing everything with what God's given you? And I was like, maybe I do have this business so I could create an opportunity for somebody else. And I had just never really thought of that.
Right.
And I was like, I'm fortunate that I'm pretty good at generating business. Maybe the reason I've been given that, opportunity is to help somebody else. So I decided to bring somebody on, and she was immediately successful and sold a lot of houses, and that was the beginning of the Justin Landis Group. So I started, the Justin Landis Group at that point, and was just really fortunate that the first 3 people that I had the following year that joined up and worked together, we still work together all these years. It's over a decade later, and so we've just had a great nucleus and consistency, and the choice to start a team, and then the blessing of having those folks be the early people in and stay with me. Just changed my whole career trajectory from that point.
That's amazing. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody if they were thinking about starting their own team? In terms of finding the resources and training people, what kind of advice would you give people? Because you've obviously been through that and very successfully at it too.
Yeah, I think for folks who are I see a lot of people want to outsource the lead generation first, the agent part second, but those are the last things, in my opinion, to outsource or have someone else do, because you want in my opinion, you want the things that are the least expensive yet can be done really well. Because if someone else is, if you've been working by yourself and you're going to bring other people in, you probably have a high standard. You want things to be done really well.
Yep.
So you want the things that are least expensive but can still be done really well, and those are typically on the administrative side. So I think transaction coordination, listing management, obvious, first ones, marketing, your own administration and calendar and that sort of stuff. So I'm big on having the administrative help before you try to give up the lead generation or the agent duties. If you have that admin help and you're still already too busy and you're ready to bring someone on, a couple things that were really effective for me with the first few folks that I brought on is we went on a ton of appointments together. And because usually if you're bringing your first person on, you probably don't have a formalized training plan. Like you haven't written out your whole standard operating procedure. You don't have a director of training on staff. Like the people are coming on to work with you partially or mostly probably because of you. They want to learn from you, but you're still in production selling stuff. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to train people is do it together. So come with me.
On the job training.
On the job training. Be on my phone calls. Listen to my phone call on mute. Come on these appointments. So, I went on with Ashton, who is now one of my partners and was one of the first folks to come on. First year, I think we went on 70 listing appointments together.
Okay.
And, at the beginning, she's saying nothing, other than, her name and maybe a joke or something, and I'm doing it all. But over the year, we would do it and then we'd recap afterwards, and then, she'd start to take more. By the end of the year, she's leading the appointment and she's, speaking the majority of the time. And eventually, as I moved out of production, she just completely took it over. But the doing that together is just a great way to help somebody learn, see how you do it, but not have to take, I didn't have to do 70 mock appointments with her. We actually went and got the clients.
Right.
So we went and got the clients and she learned and I was just doing my business and there she was with me. And I think that is a really effective way to help train your first person.
But you're obviously not doing that now. So now you've got
No. Yeah. One of the things we learned about that, so we'd been doing it, team was growing over the first couple of years, but we were growing by 1 or 2 people a year because we realized you can basically have one person follow you around, Right. And so if that's your training and you want someone to be real well trained, you can train 1, maybe 2. So Jared, my other partner who's been with me a long time, he would have someone follow him. I'd have someone follow me. And we're like, hey, by the end of the year, we added 2 awesome agents, which is great. At the beginning, we weren't ready to add a bunch of agents, but we got to the point where we were like, hey, if we want to grow this more or quicker, then we need to change what we're doing. And, we both Jared and I bet on each other there. And he was like, hey, I feel really confident if you can bring in great people, I can train them. And he was, selling 50, 60 houses a year at that point. And so it was a big risk to move out of production into training.
Yeah.
I had never done any formal recruiting or anything like that. People were coming mainly just organically to the team at that point. And so we took a bet on each other. And I was like, hey, I think I can bring in a person a month. And he's like, I think I can help them be really productive. And fortunately, we found success on that. And that ended up being really great to have someone who had a lot of experience be the one to train the agents that they came in and help them start to grow their business.
So you've explained how you train people on the listing side. What about on the buy side? Was that still
very similar on the buyer side? So we would go on the buyer consults together to secure the business, and then we would go out together. And it's harder on the buyer side because obviously it's more reactive to go out and there's more showings. But yeah, still having that new person come with you on the showings so that they can see you, that they can see how you do it and be there live. And then you can also recap. This is a huge part. Then you can recap it together afterwards. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, what'd you think about that house? What'd you think about their question?
Right.
How would you answer it? And then you can just have that conversation. And that I think is just really effective when you bring someone on.
Did you find it was a 2-way learning streak though? Did you learn stuff from them too? Because
I think for sure. Perspective too. It's great to have I'm a big believer just in general in collective intelligence. And I think that's one of the things that has really helped our team over the years is we have really great, smart people. And if you collaborate together and you get multiple opinions, especially if the opinions are diverse, you're just going to get better information, right? It's just better than if one person is trying to solve it all themselves.
Right. So you started building up a team, mm-hmm. and then you now have a brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
What made you transition from having a very successful team to then deciding, do you know what? I'm just going to open up my own brokerage.
Yeah. So the team was growing steadily, and we got to the point. I think when we started the brokerage, we had maybe 30 agents or so on the team, and it sold somewhere in the 600 to 800 house range the year before. And a couple of big things on the brokerage was one to create opportunities for people who are on the team and in my world, and this gave a new opportunity. Because if you have talented, ambitious people in your world and around you, I mean, they want to grow.
Right.
And so if you don't grow, it's not the guarantee they're going to leave, and it's not that everyone has to stay and can't move on to other opportunities. But I mean, just the opportunity of, hey, we're starting something new. We're starting it from scratch. There's an opportunity for people to be in early, to do that. That was a big piece. But the biggest piece was we had started using the team to try to do good over the last 3 or 4 years. We had a lot of mission-minded, purpose-based people in the team, and people were doing really generous, great things individually, but we hadn't used the business for good or anything like that. And we had this idea, we're like, man, maybe the team has gotten to a large enough size where we could use it to do good. We could make a difference with it. And so we set out, the very first thing we did this 90 and 90 campaign where we tried to help 90 buyers go under contract in 90 days and raise $90,000 to fight homelessness, which we were going to donate to the Atlanta mission. And we had never raised any money. So, I mean, it's not like we have a professional fundraiser or anything on staff. And we also never sold that many houses in 90 days either. But it was so successful. We actually did get our 90th contract on the 90th day, and we raised over $90,000. And primarily how we did that was with all our transaction partners. So lender, attorney, home warranty, natural gas rebates, insurance agent, inspector. And we ask all those folks, hey, when we do a deal together, will you pitch in to fight homelessness? We're going to do the same. The agents are doing the same. And man, we had like just such unanimous buy-in to that. And it did raise over $90,000. The Atlanta mission had the idea, why don't we tell this story to our donor base, challenge them to double it. That raised $180,000 more dollars. And we were like, wow, $270,000 in 90 days to fight homelessness. And we sold more houses than we've ever sold. That's good.
That's amazing.
That's good.
That's amazing.
Purpose-based business is good business. And that was a glimpse into, hey, if you have a bigger purpose, then it's a motivator. It helps you do the tough things. And we were like, hey, we want to have want that. We had that at the team. We're like, hey, we want that in a brokerage. We want to have a brokerage that is that's purpose-based and that, is doing great business. I mean, you have to do great business.
Sure. You're not going to survive very long without it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm a huge fan of Patagonia, the clothing company. I mean, their mission is to save the planet. But if their T-shirts were terrible, no one would buy them, right? I mean, they have to be good. They're $50 T-shirts. I mean, it has to be a good T-shirt or you wouldn't buy it. But the fact that they are working to save the planet and they're producing a great product, we're like, yeah, that's the kind of thing we want to do. And so we felt like there was an opportunity, to provide growth for people in our organization and provide, build something new, which also is just kind of fun. And then also we're like, hey, maybe we can, really make an impact on housing by starting a purpose-based brokerage.
That's amazing. So after that 90, have you gone up to 180, 180, or,
It did have a nice ring to it, which is one of the things I loved about it. The next year on the team, we had grown and 90 was not a hard enough goal. And it's like, oh, I can't really get a good ring on whatever, this isn't the right number. I can't really get a good ring on that anymore.
It was tough saying 180 3 times. I get that.
Yes, it was. I mean, and if you're doing 180 and 180, you just extended so anyway. But yes, I like to have a catchy name on things. It is easier to remember. But yeah, we've done a good amount of fundraising campaigns. And for anybody listening, I mean, I think the two biggest things I've learned on that is if you do stuff together, you can make a bigger impact. Because even if all the folks who gave that $90,000 had given the same money individually, separately, the Atlanta mission could not have gone out and told the story and done a challenge campaign. Because no one person, that was given by a lot of people. No one person gave a substantial amount. But because we did it together, it could be leveraged for more. The other thing I've learned is that people want to do good. And by asking our transaction partners, I was so impressed at how generous people were about it. If you give people the opportunity, I mean, there's great people. This is a great industry. So many people are in real estate because they want to help people. And if you give them the opportunity, invite them in to do it, people will take you up on it. And I've seen that happen again and again as we've done campaigns over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of brokerages, they have philanthropic funds too, right?
Yep.
So where the agents give money towards it and then it goes to other people's side.
For sure. Do it together. I mean, doing
great.
it together, I think is just, is so powerful.
But your team, you also do community service events too, right? Is that correct? So tell me a bit about that too.
I mean, I think one of the cool things about when you're doing service, you're obviously helping. I mean, hopefully your service is set up to actually be helpful. And 2, you're building your culture and community together. And the type people that love to do that, those are the type people I love to be in business with. And I mean, actually, we just found out we were Volunteer Organization of the Year at the Gateway Center, which does a great job fighting homelessness here, right in the heart of the city. And it's just a cool testament to people going out and making a difference and serving together. And I think there's just so many benefits that you get as an organization by helping others. It actually ends up helping you,
right?
Even though that's not probably what you set out to do.
No, I think you're right there. I think the more you give, the more you get back in more meaningful ways. So I think that's great.
For sure.
So, I mean, how do you manage to balance everything though? I mean, you mentioned, your wife works, 3 daughters, running a brokerage, still running the team too. I mean, how do you do everything?
Well, I definitely haven't managed everything always. I mean, in those early years of selling a lot of houses, I mean, I didn't balance it. And I mean, and I think, I've seen a lot of agents over the years in that position where, fortunate to have a lot of business, but have no margin and no extra time. And the very first coach that I worked with, one of the first things he challenged me was to take a Sunday off, one day off. Couldn't remember the last time I had taken a day off. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. But I didn't have any support set up. We got multiple offers on something on Saturday. I was like, I'm just not going to respond to this on Sunday. No, I am. So I had my coaching call and he's like, how'd you do? And I was like, I failed. And he was like, you can't even take a day off. Do you want to change? And I was like, yes. And he was like, well, will you work with me to actually do it? And I was like, yes. And that was, the beginning of like the setup of that, of like, hey, you've got to be able to trust other people to do it. And so, over the years, it definitely didn't happen overnight. And I think anyone who's asking them, like trying to do it overnight, you're probably setting yourself up to fail on it. And so, over the years, I mean, I went from, selling buyer and seller side and securing the business and trying to grow the team to, out of the buyer side, out of the seller side, then out of the appointment. That took 3 years. So 1 year to move out of the buyer side, 1 year to move out of the seller side, 1 year to move out of the appointments, because I was still, even though I wasn't working the buyer and seller business, I was still going on the appointments to secure the business. And so that, took 3 years. And obviously that puts me, I was out of production. That's a completely different setup. And that's the setup I have now where, I could have great control over the weekends and evenings and work really hard during the days. But a couple of things I learned along the way that were really helpful is, one, if you don't have that setup yet where you truly have time off, the time that you are with other people, with your loved ones or with somebody not working, I think the ability to be present with them then is worth more in a shorter amount of time than not being present in a longer time. So that same coach, he had me, and if anyone was driving around Grant Park in 2014 or 15, you might have seen me doing this. I would park a block away from the house when I come home, respond to any emails or text, meditate for a couple minutes, eyes closed in the car. So when I walked in the door and my daughter came to me, I was present where I was. And I wasn't like, oh, hey, I got to go send this email, or I'm on the phone, like, shh, be quiet.
Right.
And so I could be present where I was, and then I would put my phone in the drawer during dinner. Now, dinner may only be 10 or 15 minutes. It's not like I'm not working at all at this point in the evening. But I just think like those couple little things and being present for that little time is really, really powerful. And so, I think that's helpful. I've tried to structure my year schedule. We were talking about this before, we went on the air. I prefer to take vacations on the second half of the year. I just think you get more bang for your buck in this business working hard the first half of the year. A lot of people come into the market at the beginning of the year. More houses sell in the spring and early summer. That's just statistically the way it is. And I think if you're trying to maximize your income, you get better bang for your buck on that. So try to take very few vacations at the beginning of the year. But the ultimate end goal, if you really want to have, in my opinion, if you want to have a great schedule, is to have other people that you can count on. Because, I mean, so many people, when I first started the team, they told me, your clients will never work with someone else. People are always going to want Justin. People are always going to want you. You'll never be able to move out of production and have people still work, still come to work with you. And quite frankly, that was just false. I mean, and I don't know if that says like, hey, they don't care about working with Justin because he's not that good.
Right.
But that has not been my experience. My experience has been that people want someone great to help them. And if, we meet with them, get a good strategy, and the person that they're working with is actually really good at the job and is solving their problem and helping them, that is perfectly fine. That is great. And, now I've gotten to the point where quite a few of the agents on the team, they are better than I ever was. I mean, seriously, way better than I ever was at helping people buy and sell houses. And so that's a service to the clients. It's better than it was when I was, serving them, by myself. So I think that's like the end goal of it. But, for me, that was a long journey to get to the point where I was out of production and able to like truly control the evenings and weekends.
So the first time, though, you're having to try and release some of that control. How hard was that?
It is hard. And I think, I don't think Ashton will mind me telling this story, but, one of the, like early on moving out of the listing side, the way Ashton had handled a multiple offer situation, another agent who I knew didn't like it. And she called me and she was really mad, kind of yelling at me. And I think for a lot of folks that, you're like, oh, I got to take this back over. And, she can't do it. Only I can do it, whatever. But how are people going to learn if you don't give them the opportunity to do it? So, and that didn't happen very often because, Ashton is awesome and has always been awesome. So it's not like that was happening all the time. But I think that a lot of people would have jumped back in that kind of scenario. And that's not the only time we had something like that happen with someone on the team. But I just really try to give people the opportunity to learn and grow. Because if the ultimate end goal is they're going to be great at the job, they've got to have the opportunity and chance to do it. Nobody's going to be perfect right out of the gate.
Right. So what about when you have people on your team that maybe aren't performing as well as you think they could be? How do you help them attain a better way of doing things?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've always done on our team is we've had people set their own individual goals. Some teams like to have like, hey, there's a minimum standard here, there's a standard here. We've never done that because we don't have any part-time folks on the team. And so anyone that's full-time, you're trying to sell some houses. Like your goal is not 2 houses for the year,
Right.
Like you can't make a living. So, everyone's full-time, but everyone's in a different phase in their career. So we help people set individual goals. And then we basically help coach them and work them towards those goals. And so if folks are not hitting that, it's basically back to like, hey, what is the goal? Do we agree on the plan to get there? How's the plan working? Is it not working? Do we need to change it? And usually when you have folks that, are trying hard and are doing the best they can, they'll work hard to make the adjustments on it. Obviously over the years, there've been some folks that just haven't put in the effort and, or been in a life situation where it just didn't work out. And I do think I'm pretty slow to move on. I love to hire everybody. I think everybody's great. I love people. I like to give a lot of chances. And I think overall that served me well, but there have probably been a handful of times where, we should have parted ways because it just wasn't working out. And I wanted to believe that it was going to be different this fourth time around
right.
On it. But I think that, helping coach people towards their personal goal to me is really important because everybody's different. Everybody's different. They don't have the same goals.
So we were talking earlier and you said you did an ultra marathon. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you end up doing an ultra marathon?
I love a challenge. So, I love to have a goal. I love a challenge. I love to go on an adventure, do that kind of stuff. So I had a great friend from college who we had run some marathons together a long time ago, like 20 years ago. And it was actually New Year's Eve after midnight. And he's like, hey, one of my friends did this ultra marathon in Argentina last year. I want to do it this year. You want to do it? I was in a great mood where I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And not honestly thinking he probably would, but then he was serious about it. And so we had another friend from college join us. So 3 of us, we trained last year. Because, I love to work out, stay in good shape, but I was definitely not doing anything near this length or endurance. And so it was 3 days in Patagonia in Argentina. It was 100 kilometers, which was like 60 miles. And it was hard. Of course it was hard, but it was
easy.
It was harder than I thought. We had a couple of things. One, there was was summer down there and the weather mostly was great, but the second day it was so cold. And I'll try to keep the story short, but it is pretty funny. We, get up on this ridge top on the second day and there's 5 miles on this ridge line and it is so cold and windy. There are people literally who had to lock arms to keep moving forward. We lost feeling in our fingers. We're banging them against our legs. We get to the end and we saw a handful of people we had seen the day before that didn't do it. And we're like, why didn't you guys go? And they're like, well, after they gave the warning this morning, we didn't go. Everything's in Spanish. We don't speak Spanish. We're like, what warning? And they're like, oh, they said it was going to be 75 kilometer per hour winds and -5 Celsius, no medical support, and they can't come get you if something happens. And we're like, oh, Yeah, that was tough conditions. No, we still would have gone, but we were dressed to basically jog around Atlanta in the 30s. I mean, there's no cell service that morning, so we didn't have a weather forecast. We don't speak Spanish. And so, picture like what you would jog on the Beltline in 35 degrees. You're on top of this mountain with the wind pounding off of you. So that was a tough day. And yeah, I mean, it was a hard effort, but I loved it. A couple of things I loved about it was, just the mental aspect. I mean, we did have, you actually mentioned mantra. We did have 2 mantras for that we got from Jesse Itzler, who I love and, is, I think, a great motivational speaker. And those were, I never get tired and I feel outstanding. So anytime you ask us how we're doing, it's a miracle. I never get tired. I feel outstanding. That sounds crazy, but it is amazing how much it impacts your ability on mile 62 on the last day to get up that hill. Justin, how do you feel? I feel outstanding.
That's awesome.
Feel outstanding.
So I guess the other takeaway is take somebody with you next time you know some Spanish, maybe.
Yes. I mean, my wife was like, you guys are so not prepared to do this. I mean, we're just like rolling up, following the crowd, trying to do whatever. The wives were not super happy about the recap of that day that we were out there on that mountain. So yeah, I'm not sure that was the best thing, but I mean, I am a big doer. I love to do things and try things and take a chance, because if you don't take any chances, you end up in like the 4, 5, 6 out of 10 range. I don't want to live in the 4, 5, 6 out of 10 range. I want to hit 9s and 10s.
Right.
But the thing is, to hit a 9 or 10, you got to take a risk. It might be a 1 or 2, because 9 or 10s don't happen if you don't take a chance and take a risk. So, I mean, I feel like I've done that, both in business and just in my personal life and adventures.
Right. So there's a nugget there. Take the risk, take the chance.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that means take reckless chances and put yourself in terrible situations. But I have found that, especially like after doing real estate for a long time, and I see this for other folks, we have good guts. I mean, if you're listening to this and you've been doing this for a long time, you can like probably back of the napkin, does opening a new location for our brokerage make sense? I mean, like you could probably write it out on paper in 2 minutes, then you spend 2 days putting it in a fancy spreadsheet. I bet you they're going to be pretty similar just because you have the knowledge. And so I don't mean take a risk like, don't have any plan, and if it fails, you're ruined, anything like that. But hey, if we feel pretty good about something, we don't have to have every single thing figured out in order to do it.
Right, but I do agree. I mean, I think you have to be knowledgeable about the risk that you're taking, but you have to risk something. Otherwise, you don't really get anything.
For sure.
Well, anyway,
could not agree more.
This has been great. Just to wrap up, how can people get in touch with you if they need to?
Yeah, I'm great on email. So if you ever want to email me at justin@bolst.homes. Bolst is BOLST.homes. I'm great on email. Would love to connect with folks. You can probably tell I love to talk about real estate and love to meet folks. And those are 2 of my favorite things. And then, I'm on social media. You can search Justin Landis. I'm easy to find on that as well.
Perfect. Great. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us. And remember, 250 calls, a different person every single day for a year, and you'll be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Atlanta Realtors Rundown. Please subscribe, and for more information on how to get engaged, check us out at atlantarealtors.com. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode.